Best deck in the format, ADP Zacian. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch and today we're going to run through the deck that swept the field in the Oceania International Championships. Didn't make the finals unfortunately, but it did make up around about 45, maybe even 50% of day 2 and was by far the most represented deck on day 1. That is ADP Zacian. Now we're going to take a look at the list that was played by Bert Walters into the number 1 seed going into top 8. So we'll have a look at his list. There are a few variants. We'll have a chat with Jordan soon about the Clay DP variant that he played. It's a little bit more aggressive, has a little bit more of a favourable mirror, but is less consistent overall. Well, let's just take a look at the list straight into this particular ADP Zacian with Guzma Hala. So here we have the cards that came first after 2 days of Swiss. Obviously didn't win the tournament, but very easily could have ADP Zacian. And it all revolves around our friendly doggo, Zacian V with Intrepid Sword. I don't think I've ever seen a better card than this that's been released in the Pokemon trading card game. It's a basic with 220 HP to start off with, which is ridiculously high. And then it has Intrepid Sword, allowing you to draw 3 cards and attach any metal you find in, any metal energy you find there. I can barely talk, I'm so excited. Which is incredibly good ability. And it has a busted attack, 230 for 3. You can accelerate them with Intrepid Sword. You can't attack next turn, but it doesn't matter. You just switch, retreat, whatever. It's fine. Brave Blade doing 230 damage is insane. Pair that with our old favourite Arceus and Dialga and Palkia-GX and the Altered Creation GX attack. That means we can very easily get up to 260 damage, which is enough to knock out things like Pikarom. If we get 10 damage higher, perhaps with a Vitality Band or a Shrine of Punishment, we can do 270. This is knocking out almost anything in the format, anything apart from an ADP from our opponent. So this deck has all of the one-shot potential. It's incredibly strong. Unbelievable that it didn't actually win the tournament. Obviously, Mimikyu Welder and Reshizard both have reasonably decent matchups against ADP Zacian, just because they've got those extra little cards, and there's a little red symbol on their cards that make it a little bit easier to take knockouts. The rest of the Pokemon line in Bert's list is around getting the consistent turn 2 Altered Creation. We've got 3 copies of Jirachi, which we're going to try and get into the active so that we can use Stellar Wish. We've got 2 copies of the Dedenne in order to Dedenne change early, and I've got a few other techs to slow our opponents down. Absol is going to reduce the maneuverability of our opponent by increasing the retreat cost by 1. We have Mimikyu with Shadow Box, which can potentially shut off things like Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team, stopping it from being able to use its Perfection ability to attack into us. Maybe we can stall them out with a Phione, gusting up something that they might not want to have in the active, or even utilizing it to take a knockout if we can. And we also have access to Primate Wisdom Oranguru, an incredibly good card that didn't see a huge amount of play in decks this weekend, but it allows us to do a lot of things. We can save resources when we're using Professor Magnolia. Primate Wisdom, a gust card to the top of the deck so that we're guaranteed to draw into it. We can also use it to ensure that our Intrepid Sword will hit energy by placing one on the top of the deck as well. There's lots of interesting Pokemon in this deck, but it's all around getting this Intrepid Sword and Brave Blade going as quickly as you possibly can. The rest of the lineup, when it comes to supporters, this build is built around consistently getting the turn 2 GX attack. Unlike the Clay build, which can theoretically get the GX attack turn 1, this deck is just going, no, I'm okay. I'm just going to set up slowly. I'm going to give my opponent a turn, because I know that even if they do have a turn, I'm going to be able to take 2 knockouts and win the game really easily. So we have 1 copy of Guzma Hala in this list to be able to search out Special Energy, a tool, and a Stadium if we need it. The Stadiums in this list, Shrine of Punishment, there's 2 copies, and Lysandre Labs 1 copy, are both incredibly powerful. Lysandre Labs can turn off things like Stealthy Hood, which can be quite frustrating, as well as pesky Lucky Eggs that might be attached to Blacephalons or Reshizards. And then Shrine of Punishment's really good, gives you that one little tick to help get your Zacian V into knockout range on things like Mewtwo and Reshizard. We want to do 270, and Shrine can help us get there. We can search that all out with Guzma Hala. as well as one of our 2 escape boards for maneuverability on Jirachi, or our Vitality Band, which again gives ourselves the option to do 270 damage to a Pokemon with Zacian. And we can also search out one of our Water, Grass, and Fire unit energy, or our 2 Aurora energy, which can be utilized on ADP in order to declare that GX attack. It's interesting as well, using the unit and the Aurora means that you actually have some of your attacks slightly more available here. I mean, Rain Splash, if you want, you can do it for 10. Ridiculous as it sounds, you can actually knock out a Vulpix with this after you've GX'd with ADP. Rain Splash will do 40 times 2 for the weakness is more than the HP of a Vulpix, which means you're usually taking 2 prizes, so that's pretty strong. We can also attack with Absol, theoretically, if we've been able to charge it up, usually after an Ultimate Ray, especially against Mewtwo Malamar, that might be using some of those Dark Weak Pokemon. We can maybe steal a knockout with Absol, and worst case scenario, we can use Static Shock with Dedenne. Ironically enough, it's doing 80 damage. That's probably knocking out a basic. Like, it's not the end of the world. It means that you've got a little bit of flexibility where you might not normally. The good thing, the ironic thing as well, is you can actually power up Jirachi to attack. It does 60 damage with a slap, which can take knockouts, and that could earn you a couple of prizes that your opponent isn't expecting. So just be aware of that as well. Now, I've gotten sidetracked talking about energy all through this one copy of Guzma Hala. I mean, we can get it back. We've got a copy of Cynthia and Caitlin as well. It means if we draw into one of our 2 copies of Tag Call, we can search for some draw, especially in a dead opening hand. We might need to be able to do that. Cynthia Caitlin obviously giving us access to another supporter, as well as drawing 3 cards. Can get you into the Dedenne, the energy, the things that you need. The deck also plays 4 copies of Professor Magnolia, the best supporter in the deck, the best supporter in the game. You'd think drawing 7 cards after discarding your hand is an incredibly powerful effect. And we also have 1 copy of the always powerful Marnie. We can shuffle our opponent's hand onto the bottom of their deck, force them to draw 4. We do the same, draw 5, and give ourselves a chance to draw into the things we need to win the game. The supporter line is all built around trying to get that ADP going off as quickly as possible, but to do that we need a couple of other things. Firstly, best card in Sword and Shield, Quick Ball. Discard one card from your hand, find any basic Pokemon. Every single Pokemon in our deck is basic, so we can search out all of them. Obviously, Tag Call can also find the ADP that we'll need to declare the GX attack as well. So realistically, you've got 6 Pokemon search cards, although Tag Call is usually not going to be used a second time for anything else. I mean, you can reasonably happy to draw into the Pokemon that you need. Those tech ones you don't need to get out straight away, and if you played all 5 Pokemon Search, you're probably going to have pretty much all that you need anyway. We also have 4 copies of Switch. We know that Absol is a pain for ADP, and all decks running Jirachi really, so we want to stop our opponent from being able to get out of the active whilst we can still do it ourselves, so Switch very strong. We've got 2 copies of Reset Stamp, which gives us the ability to stop our opponent from gaining momentum at the end game. They're usually going to try and take a knockout on an ADP, then they might get a knockout on a Zacian. That's 5 prizes, but not enough to win the game. So Reset Stamp to 1, 2 copies of that gives you a good chance of getting into it at the end. We also have 1 copy of Great Catcher to discard 2 cards and bring up one of our opponent's GX Pokemon, especially good in the early game. If your ADP survives past the GX attack, you can utilize this to take a knockout on something like a Dedenne. That's 3 free prizes. 3 free prizes, hard to say, but easy to do in game, and that pretty much sets you up to win. Anything that your opponent puts into the active can be knocked out by a Zacian that you power up after you've taken the knockout on the Dedenne. We also have 4 copies of Custom Catcher, very, very strong gust, but also gives you that extra little bit of consistency. Sometimes the deck does find itself in awkward hands where it doesn't have all the things that it would like. Play a Custom Catcher, give yourself a chance to draw into a few more cards. That's actually 6 gust effects that we have in the deck. We've got 1 Great Catcher, 4 Custom Catcher, which gives you, 2 gusts, and then a Phione gives you infinity gusts, so realistically, you're going to be able to gust as many times as you want, and sometimes all you need is just to take a knockout on something, and you'll be able to get yourself the prizes you need to win the game. Also, looking at Metal Saucer, this card gives the deck even more maneuverability than it had before. You can utilize Metal Saucer to power up a Zacian out of nowhere. If you've got a busted turn, triple Metal Saucer, power up a Zacian out of nowhere, take a knockout with it, incredibly strong. Now, this particular list, being that it's playing the Tag Call engine as opposed to the Clay one, is slightly more consistent. It gets off that GX attack pretty much every single game on the second turn. It just means you don't quite have the explosive pace of the Clay version. We will show that off. In fact, I think I'm probably going to do that deck list tomorrow, so check that one out as well. But this one is the one that did the best on the day, the one that I think most people will gear themselves towards, but just be aware that there is that quick explosive Clay version out there as well. Anyway, we'll take this onto the ladder. There's a lot of this deck floating around, as well as a lot of Mew Welder, so hopefully we don't run into a really bad matchup, and hopefully we can show you exactly how it does. Here we go, let's take a look at this particular matchup. I'm excited to see how we go. Like I mentioned, there's lots of this floating around on the ladder at the moment, so there's a good chance that this one's going to be a mirror. And I mean, the Zacian sleeves, I don't give it away, but I mean, we're probably going to be playing it here. We've got a mulligan. The hand's not particularly strong, so I'm glad we didn't have a basic there, but the good thing is we are always able to draw cards with Zacian. This hand, not quite as bad. I mean, it's still okay. We've got a Jirachi and a Dedenne, but we don't have any ADPs floating around, and the worst thing is our opponent is going to go first, so there is every chance we lose this game simply because our opponent gets the first GX attack. They've opened a Jirachi here as well, and they've got some extra cards from the mulligan, so they're going to be in a really good position to set themselves up for the second turn. As long as we can do what we want, we should be fine. Grabbing a switch off of the Jirachi here. The key thing for them is that they need to make sure that they get a Zacian or an ADP in play. Probably the ADP, just because they want to get that GX attack off. So switching into another Jirachi to get themselves a quick ball. Very, very strong card here. That can be a number of different things. They play down Phione and Zacian and then utilize that quick ball. They could potentially go for the ADP here. They get rid of the Mew from their list. Get rid of that one. Probably not going to be required. They could go for the ADP here, but they only go for that if they've got energy in hand. If they don't, they probably go for Dedenne. So we'll know exactly what their choice is in just a second. I'd say ADP is obviously the best one, but Dedenne indicates maybe not. Maybe they don't quite have the hand to get themselves going here. They've got a second quick ball actually, so there you go. The decision is very, very simple. They'll discard a Pokemon catcher and grab, actually they're grabbing Absol here, so maybe they're not going for that turn 2 GX attack, which means that we might actually be able to take the upper hand in this game. If we get the GX attack off first, then theoretically we should be able to win this one. They've actually locked themselves out of having an ADP at all. So this Dedenne here means that ADP is not coming down from our opponent. Perhaps our opponent thinking that we're playing something else. So this is a very strong spot for us to be in. We don't really have anything to do with this hand. We could just Great Catcher up that Dedenne, discard a couple of metal. Let's take a look and see what the custom catcher gives us. Not a lot, actually. Sorry, the Stellar Wish gets us an escape board. It's not amazing. I was looking for a Cherish Ball there, not a Cherish Ball, a Quick Ball there. If we had found one, this hand would be incredibly strong. All we realistically need to do is just get ourselves an attachment, but unfortunately, it's not going to be the case. We will gust up that Dedenne. We find the Tag Call, so we're going to grab ADP and we'll grab Guzma Hala. This pretty much guarantees us an attack next turn as long as we can find a switch. We also have the Absol, so that Dedenne is going to be incredibly difficult to get out of the active. I'll actually get rid of the Guzma Hala here because we don't want to really lose that custom catcher. The Shrine of Punishment could be important. So could the Vitality Band, so maybe not. Looks like my opponent using Phione here to free themselves up a space on their bench. There's the ADP that they could have played down before. And now we're actually a turn ahead on attachments, so as long as everything goes well here, we could be in a really strong position. Best case scenario for us is we find a switch and we find an energy. The annoying thing for our opponent is that they are going to need to utilize some of their switch cards to get this Dedenne out of the active. They can't attach and use an escape board to also get the GX attack off. Again, I need to use switch at some point. And we know that they've already used at least one of them, so that's pretty good. We're in a position now where we can be a little bit of a pain. We can give ourselves a chance here to get the GX attack off, and not only to do that, but to also get a knockout on the Dedenne, which would pretty much seal us up the game. There's a switch here from our opponent. That's at least the second one. So if we can find another custom catcher here, as ridiculous as it sounds, it might actually be worth just gusting that Dedenne up again and asking the question of my opponent, can you actually get this out of the active? Now ADP here with an Aurora Energy on it. They've got the Professor's Research as well, so they're going to burn a ton of cards. Reset Stamp goes, Zacian V goes. I'm feeling okay. If they choose to use the Altered Creation, I feel like we're in a good spot, but no, they go for the Intrepid Sword and hit 2 energy off of it. That's ridiculous. But hey, oh my god, we got the custom catcher. Alright, let's play down the Shrine. That means the ticks are going to happen nicely on the ADP. We can custom catcher up one of our opponent's Pokemon. I'm thinking it's going to be Dedenne again. They've used 2 Switch. I don't really need the Vitality Band on anything. It's not really worth playing, so I'm just going to Professor's Research it away, and I find Switch and a Metal Energy, so I'm going to be able to get that GX attack off this turn. We'll just switch into the ADP, and we could play down this Zacian and Metal Saucer to it. I think I will. I could just GX attack. There's no real right or wrong answer here. I guess I'm just going to go for it. Give myself a bit of an option just in case things go wrong. My issue here though is I've got Jirachi, Zacian and a Skateboard, but I don't really have any way of finding myself another energy. Good thing is if I do top deck custom catcher, which I mean is unlikely, but it could happen, then I've at least got 3 playable cards so I can get down to 3 to find an energy. I mean, it all relies on whether my opponent can get out of the active here. If my opponent doesn't retreat this Dedenne, I feel like I just win the game. So I'll be able to set up an Ultimate Ray, use my Zacian the next turn to take a knockout. The Shrine of Punishment's already ticked all of the relevant Pokemon into range, and if my opponent offers up something that isn't ADP or Zacian V, then I'm going to be in a really strong spot. My opponent here using Cynthia and Caitlin, 3 more cards for them. They also grabbed the Professor Magnolia for next turn. They've actually got another Switch in hand, which is fair enough. They've got a big hand. They go into the Jirachi here, which is really interesting. They've got this Skateboard on it. Maybe they've forgotten about our Absol, or perhaps they're going to use the 4th Switch to get themselves back into the ADP to attack. We'll just have a look here and see what cards I've used. Not a huge amount here, so I'm looking pretty strong. My opponent grabbing Guzma Hala. There is the 4th Switch, and they're actually going into the Jirachi here, which is an interesting choice. It means that maybe my opponent isn't necessarily there yet. Maybe they don't have the energy, which would be ridiculous. I mean, there's so many energy on my opponent's field, you'd think that in their massive hand they'd be able to get one just a GX attack, but no. Looks like my opponent here banking on the fact that I won't be able to get the attack, and fair enough, I've got 3 cards in hand and I don't have enough energy on the active to actually do anything yet, so it could be worse for him. But I mean, you would have thought that he actually has the metal in hand. This is really weird. He could have gone into the ADP to GX. Maybe he's afraid of that ADP getting knocked out by a Zacian next turn. It's a really interesting choice to not do that, and I mean, it's gonna... I've got the custom catcher. Okay, so here we go. We can play down the Jirachi, put the Escape Board on the Jirachi, play down the Zacian, give ourselves 3 cards. Hopefully we find a Metal, and we do. We actually get a Metal Saucer as well, and a Dedenne. This is almost a perfect hand. We're going to use the Metal Saucer, attached to the non-powered Zacian, attach the energy to the active, Ultimate Ray the Jirachi, take 2 prizes, and then power up 2 Zacians on the bench. I don't think that there's any way my opponent can come back from this. That was an incredibly lucky top deck by me, but I guess I was given the time to do it because he refused to go into his ADP, and he concedes. Our opponent concedes because they know how strong ADP Zacian is once the GX attack is off. Taking knockouts like that means that you set yourself to win games after 3 or 4 turns. It's an incredibly strong deck, one that I would definitely recommend, especially if you're new to the game. It's got a very simple kind of linear strategy that can be kind of tinkered with a little bit here or there to get the knockouts that you need. A very good deck to learn to play the game, I think, and it feels good to take lots of prizes. I mean, it always feels good to win, so this deck can definitely win games. Thank you very much to everyone who played this deck on day 1 and 2 of the Melbourne International Championships. It means that we get more deck lists to take a look at, and it means that you get to watch more videos on the Sableyes. If you like them and you want to consider subscribing, there's a button that's just about here. Over here are some videos that you might like, and down the bottom is a playlist of some more Sword and Shield deck lists for you to enjoy. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more from us, and apart from that, we'll see you all next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.